since both my parents worked full-time. I went to daycare from a young age. I saw them work hard every day, and it inspired me. I dreamed of becoming a successful career woman, independent and able to stand on my own. With my strong personality and ambition, I became very competitive. If I fell during a race in gym class, I'd get up without crying and keep going. If I didn't do well on a test, I'd study late until I improved. Failing wasn't an option for me. My parents would say, "You don't always have to be number one. We just want you to be your best. We're proud of your hard work, but it's important to lean on your family too. We're here to support you." I carried this advice with me as I entered a prestigious high school, known for its tough academics. Passing the entrance exam with top scores was a big achievement. It was there I met Mark, who would change my life. Mark had the highest grades in the entrance exam and gave the opening speech. He said, "It's okay not to be number one. I believe failure is a valuable experience." His words reminded me of my father's advice. I felt an instant connection to Mark. We ended up in the same advanced class, where the top students studied. Despite the competitive atmosphere, Mark always excelled. Mark shared stories about his strict mother, who had taught him to handle anything life threw at him. Meeting her at the entrance ceremony, I saw where his drive came from. She was strong, and it was clear her influence shaped his success. Over the next 3 years of high school, Mark continued to shine. He was the class leader, top student, and excelled in sports and music. Although I admired him deeply and had a quiet crush, I never told him. He seemed perfect, like someone I could only admire from afar. After high school, I focused on my own career goals. I faced many job rejections, but didn't give up. Eventually, I landed a position at a top company. Even though it wasn't my first choice, it was a big step toward my childhood dream of becoming a career woman. As one of the few women hired for the role at the time, I worked hard. My days were full of traveling, running in heels, and trying to balance financial and emotional independence. I kept in touch with my parents, but I didn't want to burden them with my struggles. I knew they were getting older, and I wanted to show them I could handle things on my own. As I approached 30, I began to feel unsettled. Many of my friends were starting families, while I was focused on work. When I got an invitation to my high school reunion, I decided to take a break from work and go. It was great to see old classmates again. During the event, I heard a familiar voice. "Sarah, is that you? You look amazing." I turned around and saw Mark, looking just as sharp as ever. We caught up on the years we had missed. Mark was now a top salesman at a multinational company, a role I had once dreamed of. He had just won first place in his company's young sales division. Mark smiled modestly and said, "They even held an award ceremony for me." He still had the aura of a high achiever, but he seemed more relaxed than I remembered. His suit fit perfectly, and I couldn't help but admire the man he had become. As we talked, I shared my own career journey and how hard I had been working. That night, our connection rekindled, and we started dating soon after. Though our busy schedules kept us from spending much time together, I was happier than I had been in years. Slowly, I began to think that maybe life was about more than just work. Perhaps it was time to build something lasting, like a home, a family, and a future beyond my career. On our 1-year anniversary, Mark proposed, and I said yes. After more than a decade, we were finally coming together. At 30, marriage felt like a big milestone, and I was filled with both joy and uncertainty. My demanding job required a lot of travel, and I had to make a tough decision. Should I request a transfer, stay in my current role, or even consider a career change? Mark, always supportive, reminded me how much I loved my work. I trusted that Mark would support any choice I made, but I was still torn when I went to meet his mother, Amy. Mark's father had passed away a few years earlier, and it was just her now. Amy had always seemed strict, but when I saw her again, she looked even thinner and more serious than I remembered. "So, you're Sarah," she said, her eyes studying me. "I hear you were Mark's classmate in high school. Graduating from that school means you must be quite smart." "I'm not sure about smart," I replied nervously, "but I work hard. I'm at a large company in a role not usually held by women. I'm currently leading a major project." Amy smiled suddenly. That's enough. I can see you're very capable." I felt relieved, thinking I had earned her approval, but then she added, "You know, I don't need a career woman. A woman's job is to take care of the home, send her husband off with a smile, have a warm meal ready when he returns, and raise the children properly. That's what I did, and that's what I expect from you." Her words stunned me. Mark had never mentioned any of this. "She's right," Mark said casually. "I'll make the money. You don't need to work." Although becoming a successful, independent woman had been my childhood dream, I couldn't deny that I was exhausted from the demands of my job. Amy continued, "A woman's happiness is in supporting her husband. If you keep working, people might think Mark can't support his family." I looked to Mark for support, but he nodded in agreement with his mother. I was shocked. I thought things had changed, and that working wives weren't seen as a reflection on their husbands anymore. "But I'm not very good at housework," I protested. "I focused on my career, so I might need some help." "That's concerning," Amy said with a frown, "but I can teach you. After all, we'll be living together." "Living together?" I asked, startled. Mark had never mentioned this. "Yes," Amy said matter-of-factly. "This house is too big for me alone." I froze when I heard the voice. It was Mark. My heart skipped a beat, and I felt a mix of emotions flood through me: confusion, anger, and disbelief. "Mark?" I managed to say, my voice trembling. "Where have you been? Why did you leave us without a word?" "I know I hurt you," he said, his voice low. "I was lost. I made so many mistakes. I thought I needed to get away and figure things out." "Figure things out?" I repeated, incredulous. "You abandoned your family, your daughter, and now you want to come back after all this time?" There was a pause before he spoke again. "I understand if you're angry, I deserve it, but I've changed. I want to make things right." The anger inside me flared, but a part of me couldn't help but wonder, was it possible for him to change? Should I even allow him the chance to try? I glanced over at Lily, who had just walked into the room, her eyes curious. "Mom, who is it?" she asked softly. I hesitated for a moment before speaking. "It's your father, Lily." Her face hardened, her jaw set in a way that made it clear she had no interest in reconnecting with him. The years of disappointment had left their mark on her. "What does he want?" she asked coldly. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "He says he wants to make things right." Lily's expression softened just slightly, but she didn't speak. I could see the pain still lingering in her eyes, and I knew that even if I chose to listen to Mark, the damage he had done to our family was irreversible. "I don't know what to do, Mark," I said, my voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "It's been so long, and we've rebuilt our lives. I'm not sure there's room for you anymore." He was silent for a moment, then said, "I understand. I'm sorry for everything. I just wanted to say it." I let the silence linger before finally saying, "Goodbye, Mark." I hung up the phone, feeling the weight of the conversation. It was over. I had been carrying the burden of our past for so long, but now, it was time to move forward. I turned to Lily, who was standing there, her arms crossed but her expression softer. "We're okay, Mom," she said, offering me a small smile. "We always have been." I nodded, my heart swelling with pride. We had been through so much, but we had made it, together. It was Mark. My heart raced. "What do you want?" I asked. "I'm in trouble. Please help me. We're still family, right? It's your duty to help your husband," he said. I was furious. "You left us for 10 years. We're not family anymore. Don't contact me again," I said and hung up. I was upset and didn't tell Tom about the call. I tried to move on, but a few days later, I came home early and saw shadows by my door. I thought it was an intruder, but when I got closer, I saw it was Mark and Amy. "What are you doing here?" I demanded. "Please, Sarah," Mark said, "we've had our differences, but we're still family. I need your help." Mark explained that after leaving me, he moved in with a younger woman named Emily, but things got bad quickly. He worked low-paying jobs to keep up appearances and borrowed money to impress her. Amy, who had found him, moved in with them, but they were living in poverty. "We're drowning in debt. We're still married. Sarah, let's start over. You're doing well, right?" Mark pleaded. Before I could answer, Lily came home. "What's going on here?" she asked. Mark looked at her. "Lily, you've grown up. You look just like me. We're family." Lily shook her head. "No, we're not. Mom and I have been fine without you." Mark tried to say we were still married, but Lily stopped him. "Mom filed for divorce years ago. You were legally declared dead after 7 years of no contact." Mark and Amy were shocked. "That's impossible. You can't do that without my permission," Mark said. "Of course she could," Lily replied. "My stepdad Tom is a lawyer, and he handled everything." Mark turned pale. "I didn't mean for things to get this bad," he said. "Emily needed me." "Emily?" I asked. "Did you ever learn her last name?" Mark shook his head. "No, she didn't like sharing personal details." I smiled grimly. "Her last name is Stone." She's married to your former boss, Mr. Stone. Mark went white. I told him how Emily had used him for years while her husband stayed unaware. Recently, Mr. Stone hired a private investigator and found out everything. Just then, Tom came home. "What's going on here?" he asked. "If you're here to cause trouble, leave now. This is private property." Defeated, Mark and Amy left. Not long after, Mark faced legal consequences for his actions. Mr. Stone divorced Emily, and their lives fell apart. As for me, I finally achieved the life I always wanted. Lily had grown into a strong, independent woman, and I knew she would never settle for less than she deserved. Tom and I chose not to marry, but we were happy together without needing a piece of paper. I had overcome everything that came my way, and I hoped Lily would always chase her dreams and never let anyone hold her back.